Where was your family originally from?
Most of my family are native Virginians. So I've done background on my family before, and I tracked most of my family back to the 1600s, and most of them were native Virginians, at least on my grandma's side. Before that, from what I've seen, most of them from the Europe and Germany area.
What was your family's religious background, and how was religion observed in your home?
My grandfather's background, he really didn't have much of a religious background. My grandmother, on the other hand, was very Christian, and we were raised in a Christian family.
What stories did you hear about earlier ancestors whom you never knew?
My grandmother liked to tell a story about her family, the Altenbergs. She would told me how they came over here from Germany for a better life, and my grandfather told me a lot of different stories about his ancestors as far as Native Americans.
What are some of the oldest family memories passed down from preceding generations?
My grandfather always made sure that he wanted to pass down his memories as a kid growing up living on a reservation and what it was like to be, you know, to be involved in Native American life. I never took it really serious, but he tried to pass down his memories growing up as a kid. And my grandmother liked to tell me stories of her and her siblings and different things that they did together. And she just liked to tell me things like what it was like when she grew up, just so I'd know how lucky I was.
What state or territory did your ancestors reside in?
Mainly Virginia. There were some in North Carolina, but more than likely most of them were from Virginia. I've heard some stories about Michigan being thrown in there, but the majority of them were native Virginians.
What tribe was your grandfather in?
My grandfather was born, his father was part of the Pamunkey tribe, and his mother was part of the Cherokee tribe. But Cherokee tribes are matrilineal, so my grandfather took his mother's tribe and was raised with Cherokee traditions. And then eventually he moved from North Carolina to Virginia.
What kind of Indian stories did your grandfather pass down to you?
My grandfather liked to pass down the stories about the trickster rabbit, the rabbit who gets everybody in trouble all the time. He liked to tell me stories about how deer got their antlers, and usually it was because of the trickster rabbit who thought he was cheating, and they found out the rabbit was actually the one cheating in the race. So the deer ends up with the antlers, and then he keeps it for all time. He liked to tell me stories about great warriors. Warriors were really important, and the different types of paint that they would wear on their faces, how to build things like bows, and how they used everything and weren't wasteful. So he tried to give me those traditions to pass down to my children.
What did your ancestors do for a living?
Most of them were farmers, I found. They did a lot of farming. I had some doctors in my family tree, but most of them were farmers. Now, as far as close relatives for me, my grandmother is a nurse, and my grandfather drove a tractor trailer for DuPont.
What are some interesting facts about your family's history slash ancestors?
And that most of it is stories from my family. My grandfather liked to tell me that there was a man named Robbie Miller who signed the Declaration of Independence. I have family who fought in the Civil War. An interesting fact about that is one brother fought for the South and one brother fought for the North. I had family who actually traveled over here during the Pilgrim times and settled in Virginia during the colonization of the United States. Pretty much it.
So can you elaborate a little bit more on your family members who were involved in the military and what conflict they fought in?
So I've had family members that were involved in, I've seen draft cards from World War II. I've seen draft cards from family members from World War One. But the biggest war that most of my family and ancestors were involved in was the Civil War, being that we lived in Virginia and the capital of the Confederacy was Richmond. So most of my family served for the Confederacy.
Interesting.